Welcome to Israel Now News. I'm Rebecca Roberts.
And I'm Yochanan El Rome.
In our top story, the exiled Crown Prince of Iran was in Israel last week, where he participated in Holocaust memorial ceremonies and visited the Western Wall, where he prayed for peace. Reza Pahlavi, the son of the last Iranian Shah, also met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to discuss his aspirations for peace with the Jewish state. Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi held close ties with the United States and Israel. In 1979, he was overthrown by radical Islamic clerics who established an oppressive theocratic government in Iran. Islamists also laid siege to the United States Embassy in Tehran and held 52 Americans hostage for more than a year. The country has since been transformed into a radically intolerant Islamic society bent on the oppression of women and the destruction of the State of Israel. Many see the exiled Crown Prince as the only hope in saving the Iranian people, whom Reza says reject the regime's genocidal, anti-Israel and anti-Semitic policies. Reza was hosted by Israel's Minister of Intelligence, Gila Gamliel, who praised his brave decision to visit the Jewish state. She said the Crown Prince symbolizes a leadership different from that of the Ayatollah's regime. He leads with values of peace and tolerance in contrast to the extremists who rule Iran. Reza hailed the biblical connection between the Iranian and the Jewish people, saying that the two are linked by ancient bonds dating back to Cyrus the Great and Queen Esther.
The United Nations Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities has demanded that the Palestinian Authority investigate the disappearance of two Israeli citizens in Gaza. Avera Mengistu and Hisham al-Said have been held hostage in Gaza for more than 8 years. Mengistu was taken captive in 2014 and al-Said a year later. Both reportedly suffer from mental illness and entered the Hamas-run enclave inadvertently. Hamas has attempted to barter a prisoner swap for the Israeli hostages in exchange for the release of hundreds of Palestinian terrorists. According to the Israeli news outlet Haaretz, the UN committee demanded that the PA provide medical treatment to the hostages and requested to see a document detailing its actions within 6 months.
Republican Senator Lindsey Graham was in Israel following a trip to Saudi Arabia, where he attempted to restart negotiations for a peace agreement between Riyadh and Jerusalem. Graham stressed that the window of opportunity for normalization was closing and that Washington must intervene to move negotiations forward. Normalizing relations with Saudi Arabia has been a top priority for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and many believed that Saudi Arabia would be the next country to join the Abraham Accords. Unfortunately, Riyadh chose to normalize ties with Iran last month, distancing itself further from the Jewish state. Graham downplayed the Saudi-Iranian agreement, saying that Riyadh simply wants to calm the waters in the region and that the oil-rich kingdom has no illusions regarding the Islamic Republic. Graham insisted that peace with Israel is not off the table and that the Saudis indicated that they would move forward with Israel if the right conditions are met.
A CNN journalist has been exposed for biased reporting and for posting anti-Semitic statements online. Tamara Kiblawi has worked for CNN since 2015. She currently serves as the senior digital Middle East producer at the news outlet's bureau in London. Honest Reporting, a media monitoring NGO, discovered a series of anti-Israel remarks in Kiblawi's social media history and demonstrated a connection between her personal remarks and her biased reporting on CNN. They pointed out that Kiblawi's social media history cast doubt on her commitment to CNN's editorial standards, specifically when it comes to reporting on the Arab-Israeli conflict. Well, despite being presented with screenshots of the journalist's comments, CNN chose not to terminate her employment and praised her for agreeing to delete the anti-Semitic post. Gil Hoffman, the executive director of Honest Reporting, said, "We are disappointed that CNN did not take any disciplinary action against a byline journalist who reports on Israel and openly calls for its destruction."
Iran used the earthquake in Syria as cover to transfer weapons into the war-torn country. The devastating earthquake claimed the lives of more than 6,000 Syrian citizens, and the Ayatollah's regime capitalized on the opportunity to transfer weapons under the guise of sending humanitarian aid. Tehran and Damascus are strategic allies. The hardline Islamic Republic has a vested interest in bolstering Bashar al-Assad's tyrannical dictatorship by sending advanced communications equipment, radar batteries, and parts for sophisticated air defense systems. One Israeli intelligence official explained that the increased military strikes against Iranian assets in Syria targeted these weapon shipments.
Dozens of Jews were attacked in Greece during a basketball game between Hapoel Jerusalem and AEK Athens. Some fans were injured when pro-Palestinian assailants threw rocks and shot fireworks at them during the sporting event. They also burned the Israeli flag. Israelis reported a hostile environment from the start of the game, where the Greek fans waved Palestinian and Hezbollah flags. The situation deteriorated when the rioters threw bricks on the Israelis, and one Jewish fan's clothes were set on fire. Greek police reportedly did little to stop the violence, but rather intimidated the Israelis and prevented them from leaving the arena. Hapoel Jerusalem released a statement saying it considers the incident terrorism in every sense of the word, and said they explored the option of removing the Israeli fans at halftime, but Greeks surrounded them, and there were fears of a violent pogrom. Hapoel said it would file a complaint with the International Basketball Federation.
The Israel Museum in Jerusalem has announced that it has acquired a rare wall map of the Holy Land with Jewish and Christian themes. This ancient depiction of the land of Israel was illustrated by D. Hines of Philadelphia in 1828. It reportedly describes the most significant events in the Old and New Testaments. The museum released a statement saying that the map was created in the tradition established by a 17th century Dutch family of cartographers and depicts a panoramic bird's-eye view of the Holy Land divided among the 12 tribes of Israel.
Israel's National Emergency Service, Magen David Adom, has been working with the International Red Cross to locate or discover the fate of missing relatives of Holocaust survivors. MDA Tracing Services processes claims of missing family members who were separated by war or natural disaster. The program has been successful in connecting hundreds of relatives, including 6 pairs of siblings, as well as locating documents and, in some cases, the final resting place of the missing relatives. MATA Director Eli Ben said the work of MATA Tracing Services has contributed greatly to giving closure and providing relief to families who believe that the information would never be found.
Nearly half of the world's Jews are living in the Jewish state. Israel's Central Bureau of Statistics released its report that there are 15.3 million Jews in the world, and nearly half of them live in Israel. CBS noted that 7 million Jews reside in the Jewish state, making up 46% of the population of Jews worldwide. Before the Second World War, there were 16.6 million Jews. Nearly 10 years later, when the State of Israel was established, the number of Jews had diminished to 11.5 million. The fledgling Jewish state began with only 6% of the world's Jewish population, but since 1948, the percentage of Jews living in Israel has increased dramatically. Last year, 52,513 Jews returned to their historic homeland, making Israel home to nearly half of world Jewry.
Sirens will sound throughout Israel on Monday night as the country collectively mourns its fallen soldiers and victims of terror attacks. Yom HaZikaron is the day that Israel sets aside to honor the memories of the soldiers killed in action and citizens murdered in terrorist attacks. Memorial services will begin with a 1-minute siren that will sound as the entire country stands at attention to remember those who have paid the ultimate price for our freedom. Virtual memorial services will be held Monday evening as well as Tuesday, while the entire Jewish state observes Israel's National Day of Mourning.
After marking the pain that our nation has endured, the state of Israel will go from mourning to joy. As the sun sets on Yom HaZikaron this Tuesday night, Israelis will fire up their barbecue grills and begin to celebrate 75 years as a sovereign Jewish state. 2,000 years of exile ended when the Jewish people were restored to their homeland on the 5th day of the Hebrew month of Iyar, which coincides with May 14, 1948 on the civil calendar. The prophet Ezekiel said, "I will take you out of the nations. I will gather you from all the countries and bring you back to your land." Our generation has witnessed the ingathering of these exiles from the four corners of the earth. The state of Israel is considered a modern miracle by many and a fulfillment of biblical prophecy. Zechariah prophesied that children would return to the streets of Jerusalem, and they have. And just as the prophet Isaiah said, the barren deserts of Israel have bloomed. We at Israel Now News would like to wish all of our viewers a Yom Ha'atzmaut Sameach, happy Israeli Independence Day. That concludes the news portion of our show. Stay tuned for Ask the Source with Josh Reinstein.
Hello and welcome to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein, and we're here in our beautiful studio in Jerusalem. My guest today is Josh Hasten. He's an influential reporter here in Jerusalem. Josh, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, buddy.
Josh, you write a lot about issues dealing with Jerusalem, and some of them are pretty critical from what we're seeing from the Biden administration. It seems that there's a lot of pressure. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yeah, we're seeing now basically a complete reversal from the previous administration in which the Trump administration recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital, moved the embassy from Tel Aviv, recognized the Golan Heights as being a part of Israel and Judea and Samaria. And now we are going back to the days of Obama, we're going back to the days of President Clinton, where there is pressure on Israel, where the administration is essentially equating Israel, who's defending itself from a massive wave of terrorism right now, with the terrorists themselves. You know, you hear talks of we need to end the cycle of violence and things need to calm down on both sides. Both sides need to take actions that will prevent destabilizing the situation. Imagine if you're a policeman, for example, and somebody's breaking into a building and you want to even things up by giving the criminal more bullets or more weapons to defend himself against the policeman. That's what we're seeing here. The Palestinian Authority, of course, has a pay-to-slay program, which they're financing terror, and the Biden administration is turning a blind eye toward it.
Well, it's even worse than that. I understand that since Biden took over, $1 billion of U.S. money has been transferred to the PA. This is against the Taylor Force Act that makes it illegal to fund the PA as they're paying for terror. And this money is going to the pay-to-slay program. So why do you think America is doing this?
Again, you know, it's like a time capsule, or rather a time machine where we're traveling back to the past, the previous administration's policies. I can't tell you why, but you know, it makes absolutely no sense to me. But we're going back to those days where the United States, provided the Palestinian Authority with military-grade training, and then Israel, of course, agreed to allow them to have weapons. Well, the Palestinian Authority was supposed to crack down on Hamas. They're obviously not doing it. Just the other day, a mayor of one of the PA towns went and paid a tribute to one of the, what he called martyrs, one of the terrorists and his families, essentially recognizing the fact that he died in the name of jihad. He died for the cause, as they say. The Palestinian authorities never cracked down on Hamas. When it comes to, they may have their differences, but when it comes to hating Israel, they definitely both agree on that. And then we have a serious problem here with that.
America's our best friend. Well, Israel and America are the only two countries founded on Judeo-Christian values. The people have a shared bond. Do these type of things hurt the relationship between America and Israel?
Listen, the relationship is definitely ironclad, no matter who the leader is of Israel and who the leader is in the United States. But that being said, here we are, I think 60 or 90 days after Prime Minister Netanyahu took over as the Prime Minister of this country, and he still hasn't gotten an invitation from the Biden administration to come to the White House. President Trump, of course, invited Netanyahu almost immediately, and Biden essentially is keeping him out. Remember Obama, who sent Prime Minister Netanyahu through the side door, did not treat him with any type of respect. And it's just a reversal talk of opening a PA consulate in Jerusalem and taking all these steps. The two-state solution is mentioned nearly in every State Department press briefing. So it's going back in time. It's going back to failed policies. That's, ironically, this is 30 years since Oslo, the failed Oslo so-called peace process. And the Biden administration wants to keep going back down that path, which has only proven to be a failure. And more Jews are killed in Israel when you make concessions for peace. This is the Middle East. This is not the This is not the American-U.S. Canadian border. This is the Middle East where strength rules. We need to show strength, and unfortunately we're not getting that now from the Biden administration.
We're the only free democracy in the Middle East. We're the only place that America can, land a plane if something goes down in the Middle East reliably. We're best friends with America. Why is this in America's best interest? What is the talking points of the Biden administration that it's in their best interest to support the Palestinian Authority, to call for freezing of building in Judea and Samaria, to try to divide Jerusalem de facto by opening a consulate? What is their message? Why is this good for them? Why are they doing it? Like, what are they saying?
That's a great question. You mentioned the relationship. Israel, as somebody coined, is the biggest U.S. Air Force carrier in the Middle East, the entire country of Israel. The Biden administration, whether it's with the Palestinian Authority, whether it's Iran, they have this belief that if you appease, if you have discussions, negotiations, that these things will result in an eventual long-lasting peace. But what we've seen is every area, for example, you mentioned building freeze, every area where Israel freezes, every area where Israel turns land over to another entity, whether it's the PA, it eventually ends up in the hands of Hamas. And those become launching pads for rockets, those become launching pads for terror attacks. Israel cannot give away any land, and any type of freezing is just a reward for the terrorists. And I can't understand or fathom why they would go down, the definition of insanity, trying something over and over and hoping for different results. That's what we're seeing now, a true insane policy, which has been proven to be misguided time and time again.
Josh, there are literally tens of millions of people watching this show. What message do you have for our viewing audience?
I would just say to the viewers out there, keep supporting Israel in every which way you can. Get a hold of your local constituents on a national level, your senators, your congresspeople. Write letters, call their offices. Make it known to your elected officials that you support a strong state of Israel and you do not believe in appeasing foreign entities or other entities that pay terrorists, literally pay terrorists, on a sliding scale, rewarding them for murdering Jews in the land of Israel. Do not accept that. Make your voice heard.
Thank you, Josh, for being on the show. And thank you for tuning in to Ask the Source. I'm your host, Josh Reinstein. Now back to the studio.
Up next, the return to Zion with Karen Hayesod.
Shalom, and welcome to the Return to Zion with Karen Hayesod. I'm Sam Grunberg, World Chairman of Karen Hayesod United Israel Appeal, the leading official fundraising organization for the State of Israel. Today, you will witness the fulfillment of biblical prophecy through the gathering of the exiles. God bless you from Jerusalem.
אני כל כך קשורה לישראל, שלא משנה איזה תחרות אני נוסעת קטנה, גדולה, כל פעם שאני רואה דגל ישראל זה עושה לי צמרמורת בגוף. אולימפיאדה זה חלום של כל ספורטאי, אני חושבת. איך שנכנסנו לאולימפיאדה, לכפר אולימפי, ראינו הספורטאים הכי טובים שיש, באמת, כאילו, מכל עולם, וואו, גם אנחנו ביניהם. אין לי מדינה אחרת. זה הבית שלי.
העלייה לישראל היא עוזרת להגשים לי את החלומות שלי, היא עוזרת לממש את השאיפות שלי ואת הפוטנציאל שלי כאומן. למרות שהמשפחה שלי היא משפחה יהודית, עד גיל 14 בערך לא היה לי שמץ של מושג מה זה להיות יהודי, חוץ מזה שזה לא הנושא שכדאי לדבר עליו בקרב החברים ובבית ספר ובמקומות ציבוריים בכלל. לא פחדתי לעלות כי ידעתי שאני לא אהיה לבד. לא פחדתי לעלות כי ידעתי שלמרות שאני עוזב את הבית והמשפחה שלי לא תהיה איתי, אבל יהיה מאחוריי גב.
If you've taken all the messages and all the education that we received, which come as no surprise of my desire to establish and live a life in Israel, I still see myself as an Oleh Hadash or new immigrant. My current role at Bank Leumi, which allows me to act as an ambassador both for the bank and for the State of Israel, makes me feel like I've come full circle. We have a people who, for the past 60 years, despite challenges, despite hardships, despite a war every decade, continue to succeed on an international scale. This is a land of modern-day heroes.
הגעתי מטרנסילבניה, ברומניה הייתי בן 14. כאן ראיתי פעם ראשונה חיבור בראייתי מדהים בין השורשים שלנו, תורת ישראל, עם ישראל וארץ ישראל. כל אחד מכם כאן יכול להגיע, כי נותנים לו את ההזדמנות, הרבה בזכות קרן היסוד והתרומות שאנשים טובים נותנים, להתחנך, לגדול ולהיות יום אחד מן הימים רופא, פרופסור באוניברסיטה, רב, מדען או אלוף בצה"ל. בלעדיכם התורמים היה קשה למדינת ישראל להתמודד עם האתגר הזה ולהבטיח שאנחנו לאורך זמן נממש את החלום שלנו להקים מדינה בטוחה ובית לעם היהודי.
The Aliyah is the new blood that have to be constantly injected to make us better people. And in order to make us better people, we need Aliyah.
The majority of Israelis, in one way or the other, are either Olim themselves or descendants of Olim. And this is the power of the state. It's a major force.
Let's bless Israel together.
To donate and get information, visit khisrael.org.
And now, Shining Light from Israel.
Located between the coastal plains of Tel Aviv, Caesarea, and the Judean mountains is the foothills and the ruins of Midras. Herbat Midras is such an awesome place to visit, especially during this time of the year, during the season of spring, when all the hills around us are green and in full bloom with wild flowers. But in addition to that, it holds a wealth of history, and there are ruins here to prove it. The particular battle that we're going to focus on today is the battle between Bar Kokhba and the Jewish rebels in the 2nd century CE against the Romans. But before we get there, let's hike the green trail that's located here in order to see some of the beautiful ruins, such as this beautiful chiseled stone that you can see here to my left. So this is really an incredible ruin that we're walking through right now. It was originally a bell cave, shaped like a bell, with a small entrance from the top where they quarried out the stone. However, due to the tectonic movements that we have here in Israel, the roof at some point collapsed, revealing the sky above us. However, originally it would have just been a small opening. And this cave was used for a very particular purpose. You notice all of the triangle notches that are carved out into the wall? Well, those notches were used to raise pigeons. And why were they raising pigeons here? Well, first of all, it was one of the main sources of protein for the people who were living here. Think of it as the original chicken. However, pigeons were also used as sacrifices at the temple in Jerusalem. So the people who were living here in Midrash could have sold those pigeons to pilgrims heading to Jerusalem, who would then offer those pigeons as sacrifices. Come with me as we explore more of the ruins here at Midrash. So the main attraction here in Midrash are the Bar Kokhba caves. As I mentioned in the beginning of the segment, Bar Kokhba defeated the Romans for a number of years. He was so successful that he drove out every single Roman official, soldier, out of the land of Israel. We had complete autonomy. In fact, we even drew up blueprints to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. But how did he gather this ragtag bunch of people and defeat the mighty Roman army? Guerrilla warfare. As the Romans were marching through the valleys that are all around this area, Bar Kokhba dug out caves into the soft chalk hilltops and a system of tunnels underneath. They would fire upon the Romans, and before the Romans could turn around and counterattack, they'd run back into these caves, take a large bush, put it over the entrance, and the Romans had no idea where the attack came from. They were so successful that they were able to defeat the Romans. Eventually, the Romans would catch wind what was going on, and they'd scour the hillside in order to locate the entranceways to these caves. However, even when they entered them, the advantage still went to Bar Kokhba and his rebels, because the Romans came in with all of their heavy armor, and it didn't give them the agility to navigate the cave system. So even without a weapon, one of the rebels could simply take a large stone, smash it on the head of a Roman soldier, and defeat him that way. As I mentioned before, Bar Kokhba and his warriors were so successful they threw every Roman soldier out of the land of Israel. But the success would not last long. You see, Hadrian, who now is the emperor of Rome, will come with half of the Roman army and put an end to the rebellion. But that's not all. He'll also rename Jerusalem Aelia Capitolina, and he'll rename the land of Israel, which it was called for 1400 years, and he'll name it Palestinia, which is where the name Palestine came from. Wow, really just amazing. Thanks for tuning in today. And your next time coming here to Israel, visiting the foothills leading up to Jerusalem, make sure to stop here at the ruins of Midrash.
That's all for this edition of Israel Now News. I'm Rebecca Roberts.
And I'm Yochanan Elron, reporting from our studio in Jerusalem. Please join us again next week for all of your Israel updates.